Have you ever been looked down on so hard they didn't even meet your eyes? Even though you once built the very system they're still running. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Naomi Ford, a woman who once held the keys to the company, now holding a mop. And no one even noticed. The truth, the black woman they call the cleaning lady, is actually the co-architect of a multi-million-dollar strategy algorithm. And she still holds legal rights. They thought she disappeared, but she was just watching, listening, remembering, and preparing her return. Naomi was once the head of strategic planning, Wharton graduate lead on $100 million deals. Now she's back in the very building that forced her out. But this time, she's carrying ammunition. In this video, you'll see how Naomi dismantles an entire power structure with nothing but a taped-up USB drive, how she turned their mockery into unstoppable leverage, and why sometimes disappearing isn't failure, it's strategy. She once stood in that boardroom holding her infant daughter fired for being personally unstable. Now, 10 years later, she's back with a mop and all the data she needs to bring down the man who stole her credit. This isn't revenge. It's reclamation of her name, her legacy, and the memory no one could erase. If you've ever felt erased from your own story, don't skip this video, because you'll see sometimes the greatest power comes from being underestimated. And Naomi Ford's journey is one of those black woman stories they never expected until it was too late. They said she was just the janitor. They said it right to her face while she was on her knees scrubbing coffee off the marble floors of the executive boardroom. Make sure you get that spot, sweetheart. One of the suits laughed, not even looking at her. The others chuckled, sipping their triple-shot espressos like they were drinking power itself. Naomi Ford didn't answer. She tightened her grip on the towel knuckles, pale back, aching from 10 hours straight on her feet. Her uniform still smelled faintly of bleach. Her curls were tucked under the standard-issue cap. She didn't speak, but oh, she heard everything. That morning, she'd walked into Ashcroft Holdings 5 minutes early, as she did every day unnoticed. The same way she'd exited this same building 10 years ago back then, in a navy suit and heels, holding her infant daughter in one hand and a termination letter in the other. Now she returned as a name tag and a mop. The CFO, a man named Grayson Beck, leaned back in his leather chair and grinned at the others. Careful, fellas. She might be the only black woman allowed in here today who isn't suing somebody. More laughter, sharp, cold. Naomi didn't flinch, but inside something snapped into place quietly like a switch flipped. Because this wasn't just a cleaning job, and she wasn't just a cleaning lady. She was watching, listening, remembering. And no one in that room had the faintest idea who she used to be, or what she still had in her hands. This is one of those black woman stories no one sees coming until it's too late. A story of dignity erased only to be rewritten in capital letters. Of a woman dismissed until her silence became strategy. They thought Naomi was invisible, but invisibility she'd learned was a kind of power too. And as she stood up slowly, cloth in hand, she looked directly at Grayson Beck. He didn't even meet her eyes. That would be his first mistake. Naomi pushed her cart down the quiet hallway, outside the boardroom, her sneakers whispering over polished tile. The lemony scent of disinfectant clung to the air, sharp, artificial, the way this place always smelled. Like money trying to cover something rotten. She paused outside the elevator, pressed the button, and took a breath. Just a floor down the break room buzzed with interns and junior analysts. Young, hungry, loud. None of them looked twice at the black woman refilling the paper towel dispenser. They saw the uniform before the woman, the mop before the mind. But Naomi noticed everything. She always had. The folder poking out of the printer tray. The whiteboard someone forgot to erase. The nervous look on that compliance officer's face. She remembered what it meant. All of it. There was a time not long ago when she'd built the models that fed those decisions. Her fingers had typed the very policies these men now weaponized. Her name had been on memos, on strategy decks, on investor calls, until it wasn't. Until the day she became a liability. A pregnancy at the wrong time. A marriage falling apart. a boardroom that didn't tolerate domestic instability. She remembered the meeting. She remembered the vote. She remembered how not one of them, not one, stood up for her. Now 10 years later, she was back in their building, but only because the private cleaning firm was short-staffed and someone had called out. She hadn't planned to walk these halls again, but maybe life planned for her. Downstairs in the basement janitor's room, she sat for her lunch break alone. A plastic container of leftover rice and collard greens, barely warm. She didn't eat much. Her eyes kept drifting to the binder tucked into the bottom of her cart. The one she hadn't shown anyone, not yet. Outside the door, someone knocked 2 short raps. Naomi. It was Rob, the maintenance guy. The one with kind eyes and too many questions. She blinked. He never used her name before. Yeah, she said, guarded. He stepped in, hesitated, then pointed toward her cart. You left this on the 6th floor. He was holding a slim blue folder. The edge of something yellow peeked out a spreadsheet, color-coded initials in the corner. Naomi's initials. He raised an eyebrow. You sure you're just a janitor? She didn't answer, just took the folder back slow and steady. Then she smiled. The kind of smile that says, you have no idea who you're talking to. Grayson Beck didn't even recognize her. He'd passed her 3 times that week, twice in the executive lobby, once outside the finance wing, without so much as a glance. And that Naomi thought said more than words ever could. She could have screamed, could have thrown that mop straight into his smug face. But she didn't, because Naomi Ford didn't need to be seen to be dangerous. That morning, Grayson barked at a junior associate over a missing quarterly report. The poor kid looked like he might pass out. Naomi stood in the corner, wiping the window track with slow, methodical strokes, just close enough to hear. You screw up my numbers again, Grayson snapped, and I swear you'll be back flipping burgers in Queens. Naomi didn't look up. She didn't need to. The man hadn't changed. Still venom wrapped in cologne. Still the same predator in tailored wool. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that she still had the original predictive algorithm. The one she built. The one Grayson had presented as his own. She'd found it again buried deep in an old hard drive last year, labeled under a different name. Still hers, still bulletproof. Now she carried it in her binder every day like armor, just in case. She was supposed to throw it away, to let it go. But something inside her wouldn't, couldn't, because it wasn't just data, it was proof. And proof, she knew, was what men like Grayson feared most. Later that day, while dusting the corner table in the executive lounge, Naomi overheard 2 senior managers whispering. Rob's asking too many damn questions, one muttered. Yeah, the other said. Word is he's not just maintenance. Heard he's the CEO's watchdog. Naomi froze. Watchdog. That night alone in the storage closet, she stared at her reflection in the glass cleaner bottle. Her face was tired, but her eyes, those hadn't aged a day. The same eyes that once read contracts in Latin. The same eyes that watched her dreams dissolve under boardroom lights. The same eyes now watching everything from behind a janitor's badge. She leaned back, exhaled. Maybe she thought they weren't the only ones hiding something. Maybe this whole building was one big stage, and the real story hadn't even started yet. Not truly. Not until they said her name again. And said it with respect. That night, Naomi stayed late, later than she needed to. The office lights dimmed one by one floors, emptying like falling dominoes. Voices faded. Heels clicked down marble hallways. The building exhaled, finally still. She moved silently from room to room, pretending to clean. But she wasn't scrubbing tonight. She was scanning. Scanning for documents, left out tablets, still glowing names scrawled in margins. The company hadn't changed their information security protocols much. She'd helped design them after all. In Grayson's office, she found exactly what she'd expected, chaos disguised as control. Printouts sloppily labeled. A whiskey glass half full on the desk. 2 sticky notes with numbers that didn't match any public earnings sheet. And under a stack of folders, a flash drive. Unlabeled. Naomi picked it up, rolled it between her fingers. Tempting. She didn't take it. Not yet. But she'd remember it. And where it was. And what folder it was under. She moved on. In the boardroom, someone had left a projection remote on the floor. She knelt to pick it up, same position she'd been in that morning when Grayson humiliated her. But this time, no one was watching, and she wasn't embarrassed. She was remembering every voice that laughed, every contract she helped write, every face that looked right through her, like she was invisible. This invisibility, it wasn't a weakness, it was access. Back in the janitor's room, she sat down, unbuttoned the top of her uniform slightly, and pulled out a chain. At the end of it was a slim USB stick taped with old masking tape and labeled only with a Sharpie version 1.0, N Ford. The original model, the one that predicted consumer drop-off 5 quarters in advance, the one Grayson had used to secure his promotion. She traced the letters with her thumb. They'd forgotten her, but she'd never forgotten them. Suddenly, a creak in the hallway. Footsteps. She stuffed the drive back under her shirt and stood. The door pushed open. Rob again. He stopped when he saw her, more curious than surprised now. "You work late," he said. "Cleaning never ends," she replied. He tilted his head. "You know, you ask the right questions for someone who's just here to mop." Naomi gave him that same smile again. Cool, patient, dangerous. "I listened," she said softly. "That's all." He nodded slowly, but the way he looked at her had changed. Not with pity, with recognition. Rob left without another word. Naomi waited until his footsteps faded before she exhaled long and low. The building was silent now. Too silent. The kind of quiet that remembered things. She stood slowly, every joint aching from the hours of bending and reaching, but her spine stayed straight. She crossed the room, pulled her coat from the back hook. Inside the pocket, tucked behind her gloves, was an old key card, scuffed expired. Her name still printed on the corner in faint gold letters, Naomi Ford, Senior Strategy Lead. 10 years ago, she'd walked out of this building holding her newborn and a final check wrapped in silence and betrayal. 10 years ago, she'd swallowed her pride and disappeared, believing maybe that was how dignity survived. But dignity didn't survive in silence. It survived in memory, and she remembered everything. As she locked the janitor's closet, her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You still watching?" She stared at it. A pause, then typed back, "Always." The elevator lights flickered as she stepped in alone. Inside, the mirrored walls reflected more than her uniform. They reflected what they couldn't erase: the fire behind her eyes, the certainty in her posture, the slow simmering knowing that she had waited long enough. On the ground floor, the security guard nodded as she passed. She smiled faintly, offered him a wrapped sandwich. "Still giving away your lunch?" he asked. "Some habits don't change," she replied, "but other things did." Outside, the night had cooled. Streetlights spilled over the sidewalk like golden syrup. Naomi paused on the curb, her reflection dancing in the glass of Ashcroft Holdings behind her. They didn't know, not yet, that the woman they mocked, the janitor they dismissed, was the woman holding the key to the very system they built. And when she turned to walk down the street, her steps were steady, not rushed, not uncertain, just deliberate. Because the difference between revenge and justice was patience, and Naomi Ford had waited long enough. The next morning, Naomi was back before sunrise. Third floor copy room. Same as always, only this time something was off. Rob stood by the printer, frowning at the error screen. "Paper jam again," he muttered, pressing buttons like they owed him rent. Naomi didn't even glance at the machine. "It's the third tray," she said. "Somebody loaded B4 paper into a tray coded for letter size. You'll need to reassign the format before you clear the jam." Rob stared at her. "How did you see that?" She wiped the counter slowly. "Didn't have to." He raised an eyebrow. "You used to work in IT." Naomi gave him a polite shrug, the kind that says everything and nothing at once. "I listen." Rob knelt down to check the tray. Sure enough, B4 paper. Wrong tray. The machine beeped once and whirred back to life. He turned to her, eyes narrowed slightly, like trying to solve a riddle without the corner pieces. "That wasn't a lucky guess," he said. "You knew that." Naomi didn't answer. She was already moving toward the hallway. "You've been in this building before, haven't you?" he called after her. She paused. Just a breath. Then, not like this. And then she was gone. Downstairs, the HR manager was fumbling through a presentation in the executive lounge. The projector wouldn't connect. Everyone was tense, time ticking. Naomi, carrying a tray of bottled water, glanced at the HDMI cable, hanging slightly loose. One flick of the wrist, a click. The screen blinked on. Applause erupted. The manager beamed. Wow, thank you. Naomi, she said gently. Someone from the back joked. Guess we should promote the cleaning staff to IT, huh? Laughter. But Rob, standing near the coffee station, didn't laugh. He was watching her now, closely. And he wasn't the only one. Because it wasn't just what Naomi did. It was how she moved. Like a woman who remembered every shadow, every step, every name. People like her didn't just appear. They endured. And Rob knew you don't carry that kind of calm unless you've been through fire. I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt like this. Like the world sees the surface and forgets to ask about the storm beneath. Naomi didn't mean to pause by the shred bin. It was reflex. She was changing the trash liners in the fourth-floor copy room when she caught a glimpse of the cover page, half crumpled, dangling over the edge. Ashcroft Holdings, Q3 expansion forecast. Confidential draft below, that Grayson Beck's initials. Scribbled hastily, but unmistakable. She only saw it for a second, but that was enough. Later in the janitor's break room, Rob found her sketching something on the back of a napkin. Drawing something, he asked, casually taking a seat across from her. Naomi didn't answer right away. Her pen glided with quiet precision, chart lines, arrows, margin notes. Within seconds, she'd outlined a predictive flow of warehouse movement based on East Coast fuel volatility. Rob blinked. That's not doodling. He leaned forward. Wait, is that from the draft Beck was yelling about this morning? She didn't look up. It was in the shred bin. You memorized it off a page you barely saw. 2 pages, she corrected softly. Rob let out a low whistle. You some kind of genius? Naomi folded the napkin and tucked it into her bag. No, I just remember what matters. But her voice was different this time. Not defensive, just tired. The kind of tired you don't get from cleaning floors. The kind that comes from being erased. Again and again. Rob was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know the way you move through this place? Like it's yours. Naomi met his eyes. Her silence said enough. Then she stood, adjusted her uniform, and walked out. That afternoon, Grayson Beck was ranting in the finance office. Someone's been messing with my print queue, he barked, and I want it fixed. The IT tech tried to explain the glitch. Something about system latency, a corrupted user cache. Grayson waved him off. Fix it or find someone who will. Naomi passed by with her card eyes straight ahead. But she caught the look on Rob's face as he stood nearby. He was watching Grayson now too. Watching the man bark orders with brittle authority. Watching the way Naomi didn't flinch when he passed. Rob crossed his arms slowly, thoughtful, then glanced at Naomi again. Something didn't add up, and he was going to find out what. The thing about people who think they're above you, they talk too much when they think you're not listening. That afternoon, Naomi was wiping down the glass conference room walls when Danielle, executive assistant to the VP, stepped in on a phone call. I don't care if the numbers don't match, Danielle hissed. Grayson said push it through. We'll deal with compliance later. Naomi kept her back turned, rag in hand. Danielle didn't acknowledge her, didn't lower her voice. That was her mistake. When the call ended, Danielle turned to grab a bottled water from the fridge. The silence hung thick in the air. Naomi, still facing the glass, said quietly, You might want to be careful mentioning compliance on speaker. These rooms are wired for internal recording. Danielle froze. What did you say? Naomi turned around slowly. Sound bounces in these corners. All it takes is one timestamp and legal gets curious. A beat, Danielle blinked. How do you know that? Naomi offered a calm smile. I listen. And just like that, she was gone again. Danielle stared after her, unsettled. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. A minute later, a message popped up in the staff thread. Anyone know who the new cleaning lady is? She's weirdly sharp. Meanwhile, Rob was doing his own digging. That night, he stayed after hours, pretending to repair an air duct near the archives. Really, he was waiting. Naomi passed through the hallway same time she always did. But she paused, looked directly at him. "You don't strike me as the ductwork type," she said. He grinned. "And you don't strike me as the janitorial type." They stood in silence, two players reading the same unspoken script. Then Naomi nodded toward the elevator. "There's a vent up top no one ever cleans. Want to make it look real." Rob chuckled. "You're good. I'm patient," she said. And patience, he was beginning to realize, was dangerous when paired with intelligence. He climbed the ladder. Naomi handed him the screwdriver. For a moment, their hands touched just briefly, but long enough for Rob to feel it. She wasn't afraid. Not of him, not of this place. And that meant she wasn't what she seemed. Not at all. The fire alarm went off at 3:17 p.m. Shrill, sudden, panicked. Third floor IT wing. Interns jumped. Executives looked around confused. Phones buzzed. Somewhere someone shouted, "Is this real?" Naomi was on the stairwell landing, wiping down the railing when she heard it. She didn't run. She didn't freeze. She moved. By the time the first wave of employees spilled into the hall, she was already on the third floor, scanning the hallway for smoke. There was none, just that acrid hum of burned-out wiring. A fuse box had shorted behind the server room. Sparks, smell, panic. Rob rounded the corner just in time to see Naomi on one knee, flipping the emergency power kill switch with steady hands. Someone gasped behind them. How'd she know where that was? Naomi didn't turn around. Because this floor wasn't rewired after the 2015 remodel. The panels still mislabeled. Rob's eyes widened. Danielle arrived, heels clicking in panic. Security's on their way. Naomi stood slowly, brushing dust from her knees. "Tell them to shut down elevators 3 and 4. Systems linked. If one catches a surge, it'll spread." Danielle opened her mouth, closed it. "Are you fire safety certified?" she asked, voice shaky. Naomi looked her dead in the eye. "No, I'm logic certified." Silence. Rob stepped closer, speaking low. "How did you know the year of the remodel?" Naomi didn't answer. She was already walking toward the stairwell, clipboard in hand, like nothing had happened. And that was what made it stranger. Not the knowledge, not the calm, but the ease. People don't fake that. You either have it or you don't. And Rob knew, so did Danielle, now that Naomi Ford had it. Whatever it was, it didn't come from scrubbing floors. It came from years of boardrooms pressure, being the calmest in the storm. The person others turned to when no one knew what to do. Naomi didn't want attention, but in moments like this, attention found her. Danielle pulled out her phone again. Another message. Seriously, who is she? The next day it started with a folder. An ordinary blue HR folder, misfiled, slightly bent at the corner. Naomi had been cleaning the back office when it slipped off a stack near the filing cabinet. She stooped down to catch it, meaning to return it untouched. But her name was on the tab, not the name tag clipped to her uniform, not the short disposable N Ford typed on a shift roster. No, this one was full name. Naomi J. Ford, handwritten bold, underlined. She froze. The folder felt heavier than it should. She glanced around, no one. Carefully, she opened it. Inside, a photocopy of a press release from 9 years ago. Ashcroft Holdings appoints Naomi Ford as senior strategy lead. There it was, her photo. Younger, sleek bun, steady eyes. Someone had printed it out. She didn't remember giving HR her real name. The cleaning agency only knew initials. This file didn't belong in current employee records. It belonged in archives. So why was it out? A voice broke her focus. Naomi. She spun. It was Marla, the building's head of HR. Late 50s. Sharp eyes, always polite. Marla frowned. "You okay?" Naomi straightened. "This fell." "I didn't mean to." Marla stepped closer, then stopped. Her eyes were on the photo. A pause. A long, thoughtful pause. "You look just like her," Marla said slowly. Naomi's voice was steady. "Like who?" "The woman in that article," Marla replied. She disappeared right after the merger. Brilliant mind. Shame what happened. Naomi held her breath. Marla tilted her head. Funny thing. I always thought it was strange. No farewell email. No press update. Just gone. She reached for the folder. Naomi let it go. Marla smiled gently. You sure you're just a janitor? Naomi didn't blink. Positive. But her hands were tight at her sides. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Because if Marla remembered, who else would? Downstairs, Rob was typing Naomi's full name into a search bar. And above them all, Grayson Beck reviewed internal logs, his eyes narrowing at a flagged ID badge from 10 years ago. One that hadn't been fully deactivated. Naomi Ford. The system still knew her. It had just been waiting. Rob wasn't a suspicious man by nature, but something about Naomi Ford refused to add up. He wasn't just curious anymore. He was unsettled. That kind of calm, that knowledge. It didn't come from training videos or street smarts. It came from building something. So he did what he knew best. He started digging. That night alone in his small apartment, Rob opened his laptop and typed Naomi J. Ford plus Ashcroft Holdings. At first, nothing stood out. A few LinkedIn ghosts, obsolete PDF reports. Then buried on page 3 of search results, he found it. A press release, dated 9 years ago. Ashcroft Holdings expands leadership team with strategic appointment Naomi Ford to lead corporate planning division. He clicked. There she was. Black suit, confident eyes, a smile that wasn't soft, it was steel wrapped in grace. The article mentioned her background in predictive analytics, her MBA from Wharton, her success leading a multi-million-dollar merger. Rob blinked. This wasn't a mid-level manager. This was an architect. He scrolled further. Internal memos quoted her. She drafted the cost reduction plan that saved Ashcroft from collapse during a bad fiscal year. There were no updates after that. No farewell post, no transition article. She had vanished, like she'd never existed, except she had, and Rob had proof. The next morning, Rob passed Naomi in the hallway near the records room. You used to run strategy here, he said quietly. Not a question, a fact. Naomi didn't flinch, just met his gaze. For a while, she replied, You founded that predictive model, the one Beck pitched as his own. A beat. Naomi nodded once. Yes. Rob exhaled. So you're not just back in this building, you built half the systems it still runs on. Naomi's voice was calm. I never stopped seeing how it works. I just stopped being invited to the table. He looked at her differently now, not as a curiosity, not even as a mystery, as a threat to the lies this place was built on. And suddenly everything made sense. The way she walked, the way she waited, the way she never asked for recognition, because she knew they'd never give it willingly. She wasn't lost, she was watching. And now Rob was watching too. Rob followed Naomi into the break room, closing the door behind him. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence between them. You could have told me, he said. Naomi didn't sit. She leaned against the counter, arms, crossed, eyes steady. I didn't need to, she replied. You would have seen it anyway. I saw enough, Rob said, but not everything. Naomi studied him for a moment, then reached into her bag. She pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, worn edges, the kind of item people don't carry unless it means something. She handed it to him. Inside were diagrams, flowcharts, timelines, patent references. Tucked in the back, a notarized document dated 7 years ago. Provisional patent registration. Ford Predictive Logic, V1.0. Inventor Naomi J. Ford. Filed 6 months before Ashcroft's quarterly model launch. Rob stared at it. You still hold the rights? Naomi nodded. They never filed under their name. They assumed I wouldn't fight it. They were right for a time. He flipped the page. A second document, a non-compete clause voided due to breach of equity trust. Signature G. Beck. Rob's jaw tightened. He breached the contract. Technically, yes, Naomi said quietly. When he presented my work under his name without board approval, it invalidated the clause. I have legal grounds. Then why haven't you filed? Naomi looked away, her voice low, because it wasn't just about the contract. It was about what they took from me when I had my daughter. They knew I was vulnerable. They made sure the exit looked like my choice. Rob's breath caught. You were forced out. I was erased, she said. But you can't erase architecture. The foundation always remembers. She took back the notebook, sliding it gently into her bag. I didn't come back to sue, she continued. I came to decide if the system still deserves saving. Rob's voice was soft now, and Naomi met his eyes, still deciding. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was loaded with names, secrets, and a power no longer hidden. Rob straightened. If this goes public, Beck's done. Naomi's lips curled into a faint smile. That's not the part that scares him. Rob blinked. Then what does... She turned toward the door. The part where they have to say my name again, and this time they can't pretend they never knew it. Rob didn't mean to find it. He was in records searching for an old maintenance blueprint when a misfiled folder caught his eye. Burgundy cover, dusty edges, no label. He opened it. Inside, an original copy of Ashcroft's 2015 restructuring agreement, yellowed heavy paper, signed by every senior executive, and one name at the bottom separate from the others. A signature in bold black ink, Naomi J. Ford, Co-Strategic Officer, Interim Board Member. His pulse jumped. He flipped to the appendix. There it was, a clause listing internal asset shares. Naomi's name attached to 6.5% of company IP valuation. 6.5%? That wasn't honorary. That was legacy. And it hadn't been transferred. There was no documentation of reassignment, revocation, or payout, which meant, by technicality, by law, she still owned it. Rob swallowed hard. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't she used to work here. This was she helped build it. She still owns part of it. And Grayson knew. He must have known. Because something this big doesn't just vanish. It gets buried. Rob looked around. The file shouldn't have been in this drawer. It should have been in secure archives. Someone had tried to misplace it. But misplacing a woman like Naomi, impossible. He tucked the folder under his arm and left the records room like it was on fire. Later that evening, Rob found Naomi on the rooftop patio alone, watching the skyline fade into dusk. He handed her the folder without a word. She took one look and her breath caught. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Records, labeled wrong. On purpose, I think." Naomi ran her fingers across her old title. "They were supposed to destroy this. The copy I signed was sealed for legal review. I never saw it again." Rob's voice was low. "They didn't destroy it. They just buried it where no one would look." She didn't say anything, just stared at the ink like it might burn through her hands. Then quietly, "This proves it." "It does more than that," Rob said. "It puts you back at the table, whether they like it or not." Naomi closed the folder gently. "I never left the table. They just stopped pulling out my chair." The meeting room on the top floor was full HR compliance operations. Grayson Beck at the head, crisp suit, colder eyes. Naomi entered without knocking, just her and the folder. Danielle, the HR lead, stood quickly. "Ma'am, this meeting is restricted." "I know," Naomi said, calm. "I restricted it back in 2015 under Clause 7 of the Interim Board Charter." Silence. Grayson sat up straighter. "I'm sorry, who are you?" he asked, too sharp, too rehearsed. Naomi stepped forward, placed the folder in front of him. "Naomi J. Ford, former Co-Strategic Officer, Interim Board Member, owner of 6.5% of Ashcroft's IP valuation portfolio, and co-author of the foundational predictive algorithm still driving your quarterly strategy." Gasps. Chairs creaked. Rob, standing quietly near the door, didn't move. Grayson stared at the signature. His lips parted, no sound came out. Danielle broke the silence. "That can't be. That file was purged from our active." "It wasn't purged," Rob said. "It was buried. Poorly." Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She turned toward Grayson. "You remember the model that saved this company during the acquisition slump?" Grayson said nothing. Naomi continued. "You pitched it as your own, but you knew. You always knew it was mine." "You were gone," he muttered. I was erased, she said evenly, and now I'm reappearing with evidence. He pushed the folder away. That agreement was never finalized. The board never approved your... Naomi slid another document across the table, a scanned email from the chairwoman herself with attached timestamp, confirming board acknowledgement of Naomi Ford's interim appointment until full restructure. Her authority stands until revoked by formal vote. There had never been a vote. Rob spoke again, quieter. She still holds legal standing. And unless someone wants to challenge a binding executive order, I suggest we listen. Grayson's face went pale. Danielle looked between them, voice shaking. Is this real? Naomi looked her in the eye. Very. Outside clouds gathered over the skyline. Rain threatened. Inside, the storm had already arrived. Naomi folded her hands on the table posture, poised. Let's talk about truth. And what happens next? No one spoke. The silence in the room was dense like air before thunder. Naomi didn't move. She didn't need to. She had already detonated the truth. Rob stepped forward, clearing his throat. For the record, he said slowly, eyes sweeping the table, I reviewed the original filings. The contracts, the email confirmations. They're legitimate. He looked directly at Grayson. She's not a visitor, not a contractor. She's part of this company's original architecture. And unless someone here wants to accuse her of forgery, I'd suggest we update our internal records. Danielle looked like she might faint. The head of compliance scribbled something nervously. A junior associate fumbled for his badge. Grayson's face twisted into something between disbelief and rage. This isn't how we do things here. Naomi turned to him, voice even. No, you don't do things this way. You erase, you replace, and you assume people like me won't come back. She stepped closer. You never thought I would. That was your mistake. He opened his mouth, nothing came out. Naomi reached into her folder and pulled out the final page, a certified document authorizing an internal review, triggered by ownership claims above 5%. It bore her name. This starts now, she said, and it includes every strategic asset developed between 2014 and 2016, including the model you've been passing off as yours. Grayson staggered back a step. You're bluffing. This'll never hold. Rob spoke, voice firm. It already is, and it will. Grayson turned to Danielle, desperate. You can't let this happen. But Danielle, pale, shook her head. I don't have the authority. Naomi's gaze swept the room. You all spent years looking past me, pretending I was gone, pretending your systems weren't built on the bones of women like me. She straightened. Not anymore. The door opened. The CEO himself, Thomas Ashcroft, stepped in, eyes scanning the room. I heard we had a visitor. Naomi didn't flinch. Not a visitor, Tom? You remember me. He paused. His mouth twitched. Then after a long beat, yes, I do. And just like that, the walls shifted. Power moved. And for the first time in nearly a decade, they said her name with something they hadn't before. Respect. The invite was simple. Subject Q3 Strategic Vision. Executive Briefing, Internal Livestream Location, 16th Floor Boardroom. Time, Friday, 11:00 a.m. Broadcast to all departments. Rob handed Naomi the printed agenda. You've got a speaking slot. Naomi didn't react. She simply read down the page until she reached it. Segment 3, Legacy Infrastructure. Led by Naomi Ford. Grayson's name sat 2 lines above hers. Segment 2, Innovation in Strategy. Grayson Beck. Of course. He's trying to frame the narrative, Rob muttered. Say just enough to make it sound like he built the bones. Naomi folded the paper. Let him talk. Rob frowned. You sure this is going out to the whole company? Every screen, every floor. Naomi's voice was steady. Then it's time they watched the truth. Friday, 10:58 a.m. The 16th floor was a machine of movement, interns adjusting microphones, tech leads, syncing the stream, HR reps, reviewing talking points. Grayson stood by the glass wall, rehearsing under his breath. When Naomi entered, the air changed. She didn't need a badge anymore. She didn't wear a janitor's uniform. Today she wore dark slate gray, clean lines, no logos, just presence. Grayson glanced her way, masking surprise with a forced smile. Glad you could make it, he said. Let's keep this constructive. Yeah. Naomi offered a polite nod. Always. The camera light turned red. We're live. Grayson took the stage. He was charming, of course. Choreographed confidence, half-truths painted his vision. He referenced historic systems, the model that saved Q2. Even a team of brilliant minds we've built over time. He didn't mention her. Not once. Then, and now to speak about maintaining that legacy. Naomi Ford. Applause, not roaring but curious. Naomi stepped up. No slides, no clicker. Just truth. She looked directly into the camera, then out at the room. The story of this company isn't just what we built, she began. It's who got erased along the way. Rob, standing at the back, folded his arms. He knew what was coming. And for the first time, so did everyone watching. Naomi held the room like a conductor holds silence. She took a slow breath, then placed a thin stack of documents on the podium. These, she said calmly, are not theories. They are timestamps, internal memos, asset filings. Every line built the backbone of Ashcroft's predictive infrastructure. Slide 1 appeared behind her Ford Predictive Logic V1.0, drafted 2014, filed under Naomi J. Ford, documented, timestamp, notarized. Slide 2, 2015 Strategic Override Clause, emergency authorization email from Chairwoman. Her name again, authority granted, still active. Whispers rippled through the room. Tech staff behind the lens stared. One dropped a pen. Naomi's voice didn't waver. For nearly a decade, this model has driven growth forecasts, presented under other names, expanded by other hands, but its spine, its core logic, was built by me. She clicked again. Slide 3, a photo from 2015, a boardroom table, her face among the executives. Grayson seated beside her, younger, smiling, but clearly present. In that meeting, Naomi continued, I presented a framework that would stabilize Ashcroft through the merger turbulence. It worked. The model you still use today is an evolution of that pitch. The camera panned to Grayson, his jaw clenched. He stood suddenly. Okay, I think we've heard enough. But Naomi kept talking. And this, she lifted a document from the podium, is the signed agreement confirming interim board power until formal vote. That vote never happened. Grayson stepped closer. We're not here to rehash outdated contracts. Let's stay on track. Naomi turned her gaze sharp. I am the track, and you've been riding it without paying for a single nail. A hush, then a breathless ripple from someone near the front. Did she just say? Yes, Rob murmured under his breath. She did. Grayson forced a laugh. This isn't productive. It's public, Naomi corrected. You started the stream. Let's finish it. She turned back to the screen. Slide 4, a breakdown of royalty revenue lost. Line by line. Millions. Unattributed. Unpaid. Every cent owed has a name beside it. Mine. Grayson's face twitched. He stepped toward the podium, voice sharper now. These slides prove nothing. Drafts, emails, internal chatter. None of this validates ownership. Strategy is team-built. Always has been. Naomi didn't flinch. Teamwork doesn't mean theft. It means credit where it's due. Grayson tried to smile, but it came out warped. I mean, really, do we even have legal proof that she still holds these rights? Most of this is a decade old. He turned toward the room, appealing to the faces around the table, the silent staff behind the camera. Who here even remembers Naomi Ford in a leadership role? That's when she stood. From the second row, slowly, like a woman whose moment had come. Marla, head of HR, 30 years in the company. Silent all meeting until now. I do, she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. I remember the day Naomi was pushed out, Marla continued. She didn't quit. She was sidelined days after she returned from maternity leave. Nobody said it, but we all knew. Grayson turned pale. Marla, she raised a hand. No, you asked. Now let's answer. She looked at Naomi, something in her face shifting from guilt to resolve. You were the most brilliant person I'd ever seen walk into this building, and we let them erase you. Naomi nodded once. That was all. Marla turned to the room. Everything she's shown, I've seen it before. I've seen the real signatures. I've filed the memos. And I kept one. Gasps. Even Grayson stepped back. Marla reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Faded ink, HR stamped, unopened. This was the emergency board authorization. Legal made me log it, but the second copy disappeared. I kept this one just in case. She handed it to Rob. You read it. Rob opened it, scanned, then spoke clearly so every mic could pick it up. Authorization for strategic command under crisis, signed by the full interim board, effective indefinitely unless formally revoked. He looked at Grayson, which it never was. The air tightened. Grayson opened his mouth, then closed it. For once he had no words. Naomi looked at him, not with rage, not even triumph, just clarity. You built your power on silence, she said. Now listen to the sound of it breaking. By the time Marla finished speaking, the internal stream, chat had exploded. Wait. This was hidden for 9 years. Is this why Naomi was cleaning offices? Someone screen record this before they shut it down. And still the red light on the camera blinked steady. We're live. A junior tech leaned toward the producer. Do we... Cut. The producer shook his head. Not unless someone tells me officially. No one did, because just then the elevator chimed, and Thomas Ashcroft walked in. CEO, founding family, silent for years. Now his eyes scanned the room like a man measuring the cost of forgetting history. He looked at Grayson, then Naomi. What's going on? He asked, though his voice already knew the answer. Naomi didn't wait. Thomas, she said evenly. You signed my interim board authorization in 2015. You approved the predictive model built under my design. Then you vanished during restructure, leaving your people to bury my name and pocket the credit. Thomas blinked. Grayson jumped in desperate. Sir, none of this has been verified. We were mid-review. This has escalated unfairly. Enough, Thomas said. He walked to the podium, picked up Naomi's file, flipped it open, read 2 lines, then looked up. She's telling the truth. The room froze. Thomas turned to face the live stream camera directly. I authorized Naomi Ford as interim board member in 2015. I approved her framework. And I failed to protect her stake when I stepped away. A gasp echoed from the room, and no doubt from hundreds watching across offices. I'm rectifying that now. He faced Naomi again. What do you want? Her answer came without pause. My name reinstated. My board rights restored. Immediate audit of all IP used under my framework. Thomas nodded. Done. And she added Grayson Beck, removed from any division using my architecture. Effective immediately. Grayson's mouth opened, hands trembling. Thomas turned to him. You heard her? The weight of the moment hit like thunder. For years, Naomi had been a ghost in her own legacy. Now she was writing the new ending live. Grayson didn't move. For a second, it looked like he might argue. Say one last thing. But the words stayed trapped behind clenched teeth. Then Thomas looked at security. Escort Mr. Beck off the premises. His access is revoked as of this moment. 2 guards stepped forward, not rough, not cruel, just final. Grayson stumbled as they guided him out. Eyes hollow. The kind of man who'd built a kingdom on silence, now undone by a woman who refused to stay invisible. The door clicked shut behind him. And just like that, the room exhaled. Naomi stood alone at the front. No applause, not yet. But the kind of silence that followed her wasn't cold anymore. It was reverence. Thomas turned to her. The board will reconvene. Privately. You'll be part of it. She nodded, then turned to the camera. I know some of you watching have never heard my name, she said. But you've used the tools I built. Worked within the systems I designed. You deserve to know the truth behind them. She paused. I don't need celebration. I need accuracy. Downstairs across hundreds of screens, people stopped pretending to work. In one break room, a junior engineer whispered, she was the architect the whole time. In legal, two associates stared at the screen, mouths open. In the security booth, a guard who'd once told Naomi, "Cleaners can't use this elevator," turned red and looked away. And in the chat, "Respect, put her name on the wall." This just changed everything. Rob leaned against the back wall, arms crossed. He wasn't smiling. He was witnessing. Naomi stepped down from the podium. No dramatics, no smug grin. Just calm, like someone finally standing in her rightful place. As she passed Rob, he said quietly, "They'll be talking about this for years." She looked at him, voice low. "Good. Maybe next time they won't forget so easily." And then, without looking back, she walked out the room, head high, name intact, legacy restored. The camera blinked once, then went dark. The first thing Naomi noticed wasn't the polished floors or the silence. It was the way the receptionist stood. Upright, hands folded, eyes attentive. The same woman who weeks ago hadn't even looked up when Naomi walked by in her cleaning uniform now said, "Good morning, Miss Ford," with a voice that almost cracked. Naomi nodded once. "Morning." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. The badge scanner chimed as she passed through. No longer a temporary code. Her name was back in the system, first and last. Upstairs, the elevator doors opened directly into the executive wing. A new placard hung beside the frosted glass office door. Naomi J. Ford, Strategic Architecture Lead. Rob was already inside, flipping through notes. He looked up and grinned. Nameplate came in this morning. Naomi set her bag down on the desk. The same desk that once held someone else's files. Now wiped clean. Ready. "Feels strange," she said. "Like stepping back into a version of myself I buried." Rob leaned against the doorframe. "You didn't bury her. They tried. You just outlived the dirt." Naomi smiled, faint but real. A knock at the door broke the moment. Marla stepped in carrying a slim black folder. "I thought you might want to see this," she said. Naomi opened it. Inside, an internal memo officially circulated. Subject: historical correction and acknowledgement. To all Ashcroft staff. We recognize Naomi Ford's foundational contributions to Ashcroft Holdings' strategic systems and corporate modeling framework. We apologize for the administrative and historical oversights that removed her name from company records. Effective immediately, her authorship and leadership status are fully restored. Thomas Ashcroft, CEO. Naomi closed the folder slowly. "That must have been a hard one to draft," she said. Marla nodded. "It was harder knowing we waited this long." They didn't hug. They didn't cry. But for the first time in nearly a decade, Marla held Naomi's gaze. Not with pity, not with guilt, with respect. Naomi was halfway through reviewing old infrastructure reports when someone knocked. She looked up. The door was already ajar. A man stepped in, mid-40s, neatly dressed, clipboard in hand. Maintenance badge. "Walt." He cleared his throat. "Ms. Ford." Naomi. Sorry, wasn't sure what title to use." Naomi leaned back slightly, remembering. "Walt." The man who once told her not to leave carts near the elevator. Who used to say, "That's above your clearance," without meeting her eyes. Now he stood like a student about to speak to the principal. "You're good," Naomi said. "What can I do for you?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Actually, I came to do something for you." Silence. "Then I owe you an apology." She raised an eyebrow. He pressed on. I didn't know who you were. But even if I had, it shouldn't matter. I talked down to you, assumed you didn't belong in certain rooms, and you never said a word." Naomi folded her hands. "You said enough for both of us." Walt nodded, wincing. "Yeah, I did." He looked around the office windows overlooking the skyline shelves being reinstalled for her archives. "You earned this," he said. "I watched the stream. My wife made me rewind it twice. Said, 'That woman speaks like she already won 10 years ago.' She was right." Naomi's expression didn't soften, but her voice did. "Why now?" Walt shrugged. "Because I've got daughters. And if someone ever looked at them the way I used to look at you, I hope someone would say something." Naomi stood, walked to him. Not threatening, just real. "You don't have to be poetic," she said. "You just have to mean it." I do, he said. Every word. She nodded. Then we're even. He looked relieved more than he expected. As he turned to leave, she called out Walty. He paused. Next time someone walks in wearing something you don't expect, don't assume they're lost. He gave a sheepish smile. Lesson learned. And for the first time, Naomi watched someone walk out of her office smaller than when they walked in, not because she crushed them, but because truth had finally grown into the space it deserved. It was nearly 6 p.m. when the knock came. Not rushed, not hesitant, just steady. Naomi glanced up, half expecting Rob or Marla. Instead, Thomas Ashcroft stepped in. No entourage, no blazer, just sleeves rolled, tie loosened. Like he'd been holding a weight all day. Do you have a minute? He asked. Naomi nodded. Doors open. He entered, slowly glancing at the photos she'd started putting back on the shelves. Her daughter's drawing the old Wharton team shot a frame model sketch from 2014. I should have been here, he said. Naomi didn't rush to comfort him. She waited. Thomas continued. I watched them spin the story. At first I thought I'd fix it from the outside, but time passed, and the further I got from this place, the easier it was to pretend the damage wasn't real. His voice dropped. But it was, and you paid for it. Naomi's tone was steady. You didn't erase me, Thomas, but you let them. He nodded. I did. Silence filled the room, not awkward, but necessary. Then he reached into his coat and placed a sealed envelope on her desk. This is a proposal, a formal one, full backing. She opened it. Project Vantage, Strategic Futures Division, Lead Architect Naomi J. Ford. Reporting line board-level autonomous oversight. Mandate, build what comes next. From the ground up. Naomi raised an eyebrow. This is yours, he said, with no interference, no vetoes, and full power to hire your team. She stared at the page, then looked back up. Why now? Thomas sighed. Because this company was built on the future, and we nearly lost it chasing comfort. You are the future, Naomi. You always were. A pause. I can't undo what was done, but I can make sure your name isn't just remembered. He met her eyes. It'll be centered. Naomi folded the proposal. I'll consider it. He smiled faintly. That's more than I deserve. He turned to leave, but Naomi stopped him. One thing. He faced her again. No more rooms without my name on the door. No more meetings where I'm copied in instead of leading. Thomas nodded. Understood. And for once, it didn't feel like a man making amends. It felt like balance returning. The ceremony was simple. No champagne, no spotlight. Just the company gathered in the central atrium, employees on every floor leaning over railings, eyes fixed on the stage below. A velvet cloth draped the wall plaque by the main elevator. Naomi stood to the side, arms crossed loosely. She wasn't used to being the reason people clapped. It felt surreal. Thomas stepped up first. Ashcroft Holdings has always honored those who shaped our foundation, but for nearly a decade we left someone out. He glanced at her. Today we fix that. He pulled the cloth. There it was, a new bronze panel, same size as the others, clean, precise lettering. Naomi J. Ford, Co-Strategic Architect, 2014, 2016, 2025, Vision, Framework, Legacy. No fanfare, no fireworks, but silence the good kind. Then slowly hands came together, a ripple of applause that rose like a tide. Not wild, not forced, earned. Rob found her in the crowd, gave a subtle nod. Marla wiped the corner of her eye. Even Walt, standing awkwardly near the maintenance desk, clapped with both hands this time. But it wasn't any of that got to her. It was the intern. Couldn't have been more than 23. Stood near the back badge, still temporary, holding a clipboard so tight it bent. She didn't clap. She just stared, eyes wide, not blinking. Naomi made her way through the crowd slowly, deliberately. When she reached the girl, she stopped. What's your name? Naomi asked. The girl swallowed. R. Reese. Naomi offered her hand. Thank you for coming, Reese. Reese looked stunned. You changed how I see this place. Naomi tilted her head. How so? I used to think it was about being the loudest, or being picked. But then I watched your stream. Reese's eyes glistened. You didn't fight to be chosen. You made them remember. Naomi's chest tightened, just a little. She squeezed the girl's hand. That's the thing about being erased, she said softly. It only works if you forget who you are. Reese smiled, tears slipping down. Naomi nodded once, and in that moment, more than the plaque, more than the memo or the title, this was the moment she felt it. She was seen. The door clicked open at 7:42 p.m. Naomi stepped into the quiet apartment, the weight of the day still lingering like static on her skin. Books on the shelf, the same chipped mug on the counter, but somehow everything looked different. Like the room had shifted to fit the woman she'd become. She didn't call out, didn't need to. From the hallway, soft footsteps approached, then a familiar voice. Mom. Naomi turned. Her daughter stood there in pajamas, hair in a loose braid, eyes wide and wondering. Hey, baby. The girl ran forward, not like someone sprinting, but like someone being pulled by gravity. Arms flung around Naomi's waist, face pressed to her chest. I saw it, she whispered. The stream, the plaque. Naomi smiled, fingers brushing through her daughter's hair. You watched the whole thing. She nodded hard. Auntie Marla sent the link. Naomi laughed. Of course she did. Then the girl stepped back, looking up, something quiet in her expression. You were never just the janitor, were you? Naomi knelt to her level. No, but I needed to be for a while. Why? Naomi thought for a second. Because sometimes when people take something from you, the fastest way to get it back isn't by shouting. She touched the girl's chest. It's by remembering who you are in here. No matter what they call you out there. The girl nodded slowly, absorbing every word like gospel. Then came the part Naomi didn't expect. Her daughter straightened, pulled her small shoulders back, and said softly but clearly, I told my class today my mom is Naomi J. Ford. She built the thing everyone uses, and they all clapped. Naomi froze, not because of the praise, but because of the way her daughter said her name. Naomi J. Ford. Like it was true. Like it was hers. No one had coached her. No one had prompted her. She'd just known. Tears pressed at the corners of Naomi's eyes. She didn't blink them away. Thank you, she whispered. Her daughter grinned. You're gonna build something else now, right? Naomi stood tall. Oh, I'm not done building. They stood there side by side as the city lights blinked beyond the window. And for the first time in years, Naomi didn't feel like she had to explain herself. Her story had been told, and more importantly, it had been heard. They held the launch at a local community center, not a corporate auditorium, not some rooftop gala. That was Naomi's choice. No velvet ropes, she told the team. This is about access, not prestige. Rows of folding chairs, a borrowed mic, flyers printed 2 shades too dark. But the room was full. Mothers, students, former interns, teachers, young women in second-hand blazers and Dollar Tree lipstick, sitting shoulder to shoulder like they already belonged. Naomi stood at the front. No podium this time, just her and a small wooden table with the nameplate The Ford Foundation for Futures. She took a breath. I'm not here to rescue anyone, she said. I'm here to remind you that the world doesn't change when it finally sees you. It changes when you decide you're done being invisible. Murmurs of agreement. One woman wiped a tear. Naomi continued, her tone warm but firm. This foundation will award 10 full-ride scholarships per year to Black women in systems design, strategic modeling, and applied futures. But more than tuition, it comes with mentorship, access, a seat. She paused. I built systems in the shadows. That ends today. I want you building in the light. Then she called the first name. Reese Langston. Gasps. Chairs creaked. From the second row, a young woman stood. Small frame, big glasses. The same Reese Naomi had spoken to weeks earlier, the intern, who'd said, You didn't fight to be chosen. You made them remember. Now Reese walked forward, not with shock, but purpose, like she'd already seen this in a dream and was simply catching up. Naomi handed her the envelope. You're not a token, you're a blueprint. Reese's hands trembled as she took it. And for a second, just a flicker, Naomi saw herself, the version in the janitor's uniform, the one who used to whisper her name instead of speaking it aloud. That girl would have cried, but the woman standing here, she smiled, because this time she was the one opening doors. It started with an abandoned warehouse on the east side. Tall windows, cracked floors, dust in every corner. Most saw a tear down. Naomi saw a headquarters. She stood in the middle of the space with Rob and Reese blueprint in one hand, vision in the other. "This isn't a school," she said. "It's a strategy lab. They've had enough theory." Rob glanced around. "No fancy art?" "Nope, just whiteboards and war rooms." Naomi walked the perimeter pointing. "Here's where they draft models. Here's where they tear them apart. Over there. That's the pitch room. They'll present to real investors, not mock panels." Reese's eyes lit up. "They'll actually build companies." Naomi nodded. "Not just build them, run them, from day one." 2 weeks later, the transformation began. Old tile replaced with matte steel, glass walls, conference tables built from reclaimed wood, sturdy scarred real, no marble, but plenty of power. They called it the table, not a school, not a studio. Just one line on the wall in bold print. "If they won't give you a seat, bring your own damn table." The first cohort arrived in early fall. 10 women, ages 19 to 43, some fresh from college, some fresh from prison, all hungry. Naomi didn't hand them welcome packets. She handed them contracts. "You're not students," she told them. "You're strategists." They got equity in the ventures they co-built. Deadlines, budgets, mentors, feedback that didn't pull punches. And it worked. By week 3, one team had already prototyped a transportation mapping tool for underserved neighborhoods. Another was drafting predictive tools for housing equity. Reese herself was leading a fintech group that challenged legacy banks with microloan modeling. They weren't just dreaming, they were delivering. One evening, Naomi stayed late, watching from the corner as teams scribbled formulas across floor-to-ceiling glass. No one noticed her. They were too busy owning the room. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't her comeback anymore. It was their beginning. The invitation came in a thick, white envelope. Gold trim wax seal, the kind that screams exclusivity. Global Futures Forum, Barcelona, main stage. Keynote speaker Naomi J. Ford. 10 years ago, she couldn't even get a pass to attend. Now they were flying her in first class. She said yes, but on one condition. "I'm not coming alone." The organizers hesitated. "You mean your assistant?" "No," Naomi said. "My successors." And that's how 7 women from the table ended up on a flight to Spain, laptops in hand slides, half-written nerves, alive but steady. The night of the keynote, the auditorium pulsed with polished suits and lanyards. Naomi stepped on stage to polite applause. She didn't smile, just looked out at the sea of faces and said, "Let me be clear, I didn't build what's next." They did. She stepped aside. One by one, the women took the stage. Reese opened with her fintech model microloans, coated with cultural nuance. Lana followed with an algorithm that predicted school underfunding before it happened. Zara ended with a systems redesign for disaster relief that cut response time by 40%. Each woman stood taller than the last, not performing, presenting. By the time they finished, the applause wasn't polite. It was real. Naomi returned to the mic. "This is what happens when you stop asking permission. When you stop treating talent like charity. When you start building tables, not waiting for seats." Afterward, a European venture capitalist approached her. "I'd like to invest," he said, "in your vision." Naomi pointed toward the group behind her. "Then talk to them. It's theirs now." He looked surprised. She wasn't. Leadership, Naomi had learned, isn't about being the only one in the room. It's about making sure you're never the last. Naomi was leaving a late meeting when she saw her. Same short frame, same methodical steps, mopping the far end of the hallway like time hadn't touched her. Miss Claudine. 12 years ago, they shared a break room that smelled of old coffee and Lysol. The woman who once slipped Naomi an extra sandwich when she forgot dinner, who used to say, "They don't see us, baby, but we still walk proud." Naomi hadn't seen her in almost a decade. She crossed the hall. Miss Claudine. The woman looked up, blinking. Then a slow smile spread. Well, I'll be damned. Naomi Ford. They hugged tight, no words needed. I've been watching you, Claudine said. Didn't say nothing. Just sat back and smiled. Told my granddaughter, I used to clean rooms with that lady. She's fire. Naomi chuckled. I should have found you sooner. Claudine waved her off. Life happens. I've been here, still mopping, still moving. But baby, you built something. That place you opened the table. Right. Naomi nodded. Claudine leaned in. You got room for one more? Naomi smiled. I was going to ask if you had time. Claudine blinked. Me? I need someone who knows systems from the ground floor. Someone who can spot a liar, calm chaos, and remind these girls they're allowed to take up space. You've been doing that your whole life. Claudine tilted her head. But I'm not formal. I don't got degrees. Naomi stepped closer. You've got stories, scars, sharp eyes. That's more than most consultants I've hired. Pause. I want you on the advisory panel. Part-time, paid well. No scrubbing floors, just building futures. Claudine wiped her cheek. Lord, I never thought mopping with you would turn into this. Naomi looked her straight in the eye. That's the thing, Miss Claudine. They thought we were cleaning messes. We were actually watching the whole damn blueprint get drawn. And now they were rewriting it. Together. The final showcase was held under soft lights in the table's main hall. Not a stage, just a wide circle of chairs filled with women of every shade, age and voice. Laptops buzzed, whiteboards bloomed with ideas. But tonight wasn't about pitch decks. It was about presence. Naomi stood quietly in the back. She wasn't the keynote. That role belonged to Reese now, hair pulled back, voice strong, no longer the intern who clutched a clipboard like a lifeline. Reese stood beside a 3D printed model of a new transit grid designed by her team for a city that once ignored black neighborhoods. Naomi watched as Reese explained traffic flows, social equity zones, scalable logistics. She didn't interrupt, didn't add a single note, because Reese didn't need her to. When the crowd erupted in applause, Naomi didn't step forward. She just turned to the shelf behind her, grabbed a small object wrapped in cloth. A data key. The same one she used to build her first architecture model. Back when she worked nights, scrubbed floors by day, hid blueprints in a backpack with bleach stains. She walked up to Reese after the applause settled. Something for your archives, Naomi said. Reese unwrapped it, eyes widening. Is this? Naomi nodded. The beginning. Yours now. For a beat, no one spoke. Then Reese reached out, held Naomi's hand, and said, I'll build well. Naomi smiled. You already are. The next morning, Naomi cleared her desk, not out of defeat, but fulfillment. She was no longer the one building alone. She'd built the blueprint, but now others would draw new lines. And somewhere, someone else watching from afar would whisper, if she did it, maybe I can too. Because legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about what you leave open for those who follow. So if you've ever been erased, overlooked, told to shrink, if you've ever whispered your name when the world refused to say it, if you believe stories like Naomi's matter, so if this story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt invisible or watched someone powerful rise from a place no one thought to look, if you believe that voices like Naomi's deserve more than silence, then maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's just one chapter in a whole library of stories waiting to be heard. Stick around. Subscribe to Black HerStory Told. There's more truth where this came from, and it's only getting louder.